Hello, anyone who's watching this. My name is Mayra Gupta. I'm a first-year master's student at the University of California, Irvine, and I'm going to be presenting today on behalf of a team both at the University of California, Irvine and at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. This is my first ever conference presentation, so it's nice to virtually meet you. I'm going to start to share my screen. So like I said, I'm presenting on behalf of a team both at the University of California, Irvine and the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. It's a large team comprised of students and professors. And our paper is titled Towards More Universal Wayfinding Technologies, Navigation Preferences Across Disabilities. Personal mobility is an important aspect of being an engaged citizen. One needs to be mobile in order to navigate in and to important spaces like hospitals, workspaces, and grocery stores, or recreational spaces like theaters and malls. I do want to acknowledge the fact that right now, during the COVID pandemic, this has changed a lot. A lot of these activities must happen online. Most user-centered design methods do not include people with disabilities, and inclusivity-oriented methods rarely recommend studying more than one disability community at a time. These practices run counter to the fact that 12.7% of the US population has one or more disabilities. So while the likelihood that a technology will be used by a person from any one disability subpopulation may be relatively low, the likelihood of it being used by people with disabilities in general is actually fairly high. As I said before, much of the published accessibility research is siloed and focused on narrow subpopulations. I've noted some of that work down below and in the references of our paper. This is all fantastic and very necessary work. We would just like to extend it and take a different approach by looking across disability groups. Our two main research questions are, what navigational challenges do people with various disabilities encounter, and how can navigation technology be more effectively designed for needs across disability identities? In order to answer these questions, we conducted an interview study with 27 participants. Each participant was an older adult and or had a vision, mobility, hearing, and or cognitive impairment. 17 were older adults, 14 had mobility impairments, 17 had vision impairments, 4 had hearing impairments, and 2 had cognitive impairments. The numbers add up to more than 27 because some participants had more than one disability. Interviews were semi-structured and about an hour each in length. We asked about strategies and challenges employed and encountered while wayfinding. Our key finding from this study is that people across and at the intersection of disability identities have many shared mobility needs. Here's just an overview of some of the topics that we cover in our findings section, like planning for familiar and unfamiliar environments, misleading accessibility information, weather, obstacles. Please refer to our paper to read more about them. Now I'm going to go a little more in depth about a few of our findings just to give an idea of some of the topics we discussed. Disclaimer, many of these findings are well documented in accessibility literature for specific disability populations, but what's unique about our findings is that we show that these apply across disability groups. First is crowds. Participants in all categories explained that the presence of crowds causes many moving obstacles that can be difficult to navigate around. Those with mobility impairments said that these moving obstacles create a space where it's difficult to maneuver a wheelchair. Those with vision impairments shared that the noise from crowds disrupts their ability to hear the echoes of their white cane and causes disorientation. Visually impaired participants also said that they have encountered more cases of others intrusively offering unwanted help during these situations just because of the sheer number of people around them. Participants with hearing impairments found that the noise from crowds disrupts their functioning hearing and can interfere with their hearing aids, causing a loss of that sense. One participant with a cognitive impairment said that crowds can be cognitively overwhelming and can cause a lapse in the ability to functionally navigate. And finally, older adults without these disabilities express their desire to avoid crowds as a matter of aesthetic preference rather than need. Quieter, more scenic routes may be preferred even if they are longer. Participants discussed the impact of various physical obstacles to their navigation, but they often reacted with a lot of frustration when explaining their experiences of encountering construction during navigation. So that was a section unto itself. Many said the construction is very disruptive since it's something one can't always plan for. The presence of construction brings about many different problems. The first being that one's planned route of travel is blocked. This means that one needs to backtrack and find another accessible route, which creates an extra burden for the navigator. Also, many participants with visual and/or hearing impairments explained that the noise from the construction can impact their ability to navigate, like with crowds. It can inhibit them from using their sense of hearing for navigation, like listening for traffic or hearing audio instructions, and it can disrupt the effectiveness of their hearing aids. And next is floor layouts, both indoor and outdoor. Those across disability identity shared a preference for grid layouts. Participants with vision impairments said that it's simpler for them to navigate in a grid layout rather than one with curves and foot circles, specifically because they share that it's difficult for them to stay straight, so a grid layout is a nice constraint. Navigating using cardinal directions is also taught at orientation and mobility and training. Those with mobility impairments said that it's easier for them to maneuver their chair in a grid layout, providing that the layout has enough room for maneuvering. And older adults without disabilities said that grid layouts are easier to understand and more intuitive to navigate through. So what does this mean for wayfinding design? One of the main conclusions we drew from these interviews is that many challenges and preferences were shared by people in various disability groups. However, the reasons behind these preferences varied. Like in the example about crowds that I gave before, participants with all disability, from all disability categories, said that they avoided crowds, but for different reasons. People in wheelchairs said that it limits their ability to maneuver and there's a fear of someone pushing them off their path. People with vision impairments said that the sound limits their ability to hear the echo of their white cane, and people with hearing impairments said that the sound can disrupt their hearing aids. So same concern, different reasons. We also found that although many preferences were shared, some things that were preferable to some were challenges to others. And sometimes an individual's own preferences were in tension. One example is with ramps. People with mobility impairments stressed their necessity, as documented in plenty of research. People with vision and cognitive impairments said that they were useful in the cases where participants had issues with balance as a result of their disability. However, wheelchair users explained that many ramps can be dangerous. They shared stories of many wheelchair ramps that are not up to code and are too steep. And older adults echoed this by saying that ramps are too steep and can cause them to get winded sometimes. So to reiterate, we found that some preferences and needs transcend singular disability groups. So this got us thinking, what if representations of users, like personas, in accessible wayfinding design center about something other than disability? For instance, instead of the blind navigator, it can be a persona about a navigator with different preferences that are impacted because of their disability. This is not to say that the aspects of a person's experience that are specific to their disability are not important, but there can be characteristics that can explain the needs of a wide variety of people. Through this, we developed a wayfinding preference schema inspired by Michelle Williams and others to encapsulate those cross-cutting characteristics. On the screen are 4 sets of preferences. Does the user prefer human or technological assistance? Do they prefer a planned or spontaneous route? Do they stick to tried and true technology, or do they like to experiment with the latest devices? Do they want an enjoyable experience, meaning one that's not only scenic and peaceful, but also has their infrastructure and route preferences? Or do they want an efficient experience? We see these preferences as more of a sliding scale than discrete boxes. We apply this preference schema to participants in our study. Listed on the screen are the most prevalent characterizations. For example, 9 participants were categorized as HPF-EN, meaning they prefer human assistance to plan their routes ahead of time, familiar technology, and enjoyable experience, even if it takes more time. Here's an example persona that we developed using these preferences. If you can see in the traits section, there are 4 sliders that explain where Omar fits in this schema. We encourage people to download and use these personas we made in class exercises and give us feedback. It takes more than just one small group of people to make these kinds of things great. We have several design implications in the paper, and you're more than welcome to go check them out. But the main idea that I want to leave you with is this. When we only focus on the needs of one disability group or one marginalized group, we're ignoring other marginalized groups that may have shared or conflicting needs. So we're not getting the whole picture. As for our next steps, we want to use these personas to develop user scenarios. We then want to use those scenarios and personas to develop prototype navigation technologies, which will then present to focus groups made up of people with disabilities in order to receive feedback. Just as a final thanks, we'd like to thank Toyota for sponsoring this research. I also want to give a shout out to everyone else who worked on this project. I'm the only one presenting, but it was a large group of students and professors that contributed to this research. Finally, here's my email if you'd like to contact me or ask me any questions about this at any time. Thank you for watching.